guys? Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana with an interesting little video where we're going to look at the Hall of Fame class from 1986 Fleer. One of the most iconic sets of all time. I'm doing this set as sort of a wave goodbye to all of my 86 Fleer PSA 10, which are at PWCC Auction right now. They will probably either be ending or have already ended by the time you watch this video next week. They all end on Thursday in the Premier Auction and Sunday in Weekly Auction number 18. So all of these rookie cards in PSA 10 condition from 86 Fleer, I have them. But by the time you watch this, I probably won't have them, or I won't have them much longer. But I wanted to do one last video just to kind of look at the historical comparison of these 8 Hall of Fame rookie cards. There are more Hall of Fame rookie cards in the set. Card Ladder caps me out at 8 cards from the comparison feature, so we're only going to compare 8 of them. So my apologies to Joe Dumars and others who are well deserving of being on the list because they are Hall of Famers and they are huge parts of this 86 Fleer set, but I had to choose 8, so these are the 8 that I chose. Without any more delay, let's get you over here. I like to start by looking at things from a very long time ago. So I've gone into Card Ladder. I'm a Card Ladder Pro member. I've pulled up these 8 PSA 10 1986 Fleer cards for the following players: Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, Isaiah Thomas, Chris Mullin, Dominique Wilkins, Clyde Drexler, and Karl Malone. Good Lord, is that a nasty list of players from one basketball set. And of course, I've left out the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, because his card would kind of skew all these comparisons and mess up our graphs, to be quite honest with you, because his card in PSA 10 condition so much higher than the others, it would kind of screw up our graphs. And so I'm really looking at the others because the PSA 10 has run to a point, and I know it's come way back down, but it's run to a point where it's not exactly in the financial wheelhouse of most collectors. And so we're going to leave that one off the list, and we're going to focus on some of these more attainable cards. None of these cards at the moment are over a $10,000. Well, yeah, actually, one of them is significantly over a $10,000 card, but the rest of them are under $10,000. So these are cards that can be obtained, you know, with a little bit of work, a little bit of maneuvering, and some financial commitment. So if we're looking at the all-time graph, again, these graphs never help. The only thing that sticks out on this graph is nobody gave a dang about 86 Fleer, it looks like, until about 2014, and then everybody cared about it. But if we look at this huge spike, this is going to be, again, first quarter, March of 2021, somewhere around there, and then you're going to see it all come back down, and then it's going to kind of try to settle again, and that's what we're going to take a little bit of closer look at, is this period right here where it settles. But right now I've got all time pulled up. Again, graphs normally help us digest information a lot more easily visual than numbers do. But in this case, the graph is kind of skewed because it's all jammed into the end over there. So what I've got on here is your percentage change, right? And that's what we care about. We're not going to look at dollar value change. We want to know percentage-wise, if you would put $4,000 into Barkley, $4,000 into Ewing, $4,000 into Olajuwon, $4,000 into Isaiah Thomas way back here in 2004, what would your money yield today? And so we're looking at the percentage of growth of all of these cards. It is no surprise that all of these cards have experienced tremendous growth since the year 2004, right? Even the smallest ROI or return on your investment would be Karl Malone, and that is up 169.92% since 2005. But looking at it all time, not surprisingly, we're going to look at pop, we're going to look at start value, we're going to look at percentage change. Barkley leads the way, right? That's not a surprise. He's the most popular of all the players on this list. Again, I'm not a Barkley collector. I'm not trying to disparage anybody on this list. People have, recently started commenting that, I'm choosing this or that. I'm simply saying, if all things considered, Barkley is probably the most popular player on this list because he's on TNT, he's on every freaking commercial, et cetera, et cetera. It's like saying Shaq is more popular than Wilt Chamberlain. I'm not saying he's better. I'm simply saying he's everywhere, right? And that does matter in the hobby. And so I think that has a lot to do with why Barkley has outperformed by a pretty huge margin all these other Hall of Famers, some of which have had better careers, right? He has not had the best career out of the players on this list. He does not have a ring. He is not as good a player as Olajuwon historically based on statistics. He was not as good a player based on rings as Isaiah Thomas. He was not as good a player as Karl Malone by any stretch of the imagination. In his prime, perhaps, but all things considered, I would put Olajuwon, I would put Isaiah in the mix with Barkley. Obviously, I think Barkley was a better player. Isaiah does have the rings, which matters a lot in the hobby. But all things considered, Barkley, I think, his just mass appeal and his omnipresence in not only social media but TV and the hobby is a big reason why he's 10x, right? And so you can see the Barkley card started at $870 way back in 2004, and that card last sold for $9,655. So that's a 1,000% increase. That is just super eye-popping and impressive. This is what surprises me. Right behind him is Ewing over Olajuwon. That really surprises me. I know big market mattered way back in the day. I'm not sure how much big market matters now, but big market really mattered back in the day. So it just surprises me. And your first inclination would be, okay, well, let's look at the pop. Yes, agreed. The pop for Ewing is less than half of Olajuwon. Believe it or not, this matters because there's so many set collectors that scoop up these rookie cards. If you're just a Ewing collector and you want the rookie card, that pop really matters because there's probably, a lot of base PSA 10 Fleer sets out there that have basically stripped all of these Ewing PSA 10s out of the open market. And so when we get to, sales, we're going to see Ewing's probably going to sell a lot fewer times as far as sales volume as Olajuwon. In fact, you can look at it here since 2004, because the pop is half, the sales is also less than half, right? So Ewing has only sold 179 times in 18 years. That's not a lot. Olajuwon has sold 380 times because his pop is 328. So despite the fact that Akeem Olajuwon, by all accounts and all measures, is indisputably a better player than Ewing, his card has yielded a little bit less than Ewing. And you would also wonder, well, surely the price point for Ewing to begin with in 2005 was lower than Olajuwon, but that actually stuck out to me. The card originally, if you look at the start value, the Ewing card was more valuable in 2004 than the Olajuwon. So look on your screen here. You can see the Ewing was a $750 card in 2004. The Olajuwon was $651. What's the deal with that? I mean, they were both done. They were both irrelevant by that time from a playing aspect. Neither was winning titles in 2004. Why in the world, at any point, would the hobby have considered Ewing more valuable than Olajuwon? I just find that super interesting and super ironic. You can see Isaiah and Chris Mullin were valued at about the same when they started, but going in order of percentage change all time, after Ewing is Olajuwon. Again, I still can't understand Ewing over Olajuwon. Olajuwon, then Isaiah, then Mullin, then Neek, then Drexler, and then Karl Malone. And by all accounts, I'm not sure if it's just Karl Malone has disappeared, right, off the face of the earth. He's a pretty ornery guy. He wasn't a real engaging fella. He was pretty mean, pretty straightforward. He harbored a lot of ill will and bitterness. I think he really wanted those rings that Jordan snatched from him, literally snatched from him on the next last possession of the game. And he's not a super likable guy for some off the court stuff, but incredibly durable, incredible counting stats due to his insane longevity and durability, along with Stockton for those Utah Jazz teams. I'm really surprised his card hasn't done more. The card, when they started in 2004, and this is what's funny, the most expensive card other than Dominique Wilkins back in 2004. I mean, look at his starting point, $1,500 for a Karl Malone PSA 10. That's crazy to me. I mean, looking at this chart, I mean, here you go, 57.50. I mean, this is just looking at the last 6 months. If we pull up all time, I mean, that's what your Karl Malone chart looks like. What's really weird is he actually went through a dip. That's a really high starting price for Karl Malone. He goes through a dip, goes to a peak, goes through a dip, and then goes up all time. So just interesting. I'm not really sure. I'd have to do a separate video just on the Karl Malone. But the fact that Karl Malone is on this list, statistically, he is probably the second, probably the second best player. If you throw out rings, he might be the best player on this list, being a top 5 scorer of all time. He had the highest starting, one of the highest starting points next to Dominique, and his card's gone up the smallest amount percentage-wise. All right, all time. Now we start to shrink it, right? Let's look at the last 2 years. Again, all green numbers. Let's look at the order. Neek. Okay, so over the last 2 years, Neek has outperformed all of the others. His card sold 2 days ago for $18,029. The big focal point of this Dominique card, and the reason that he is unique and distinct from all the others, look at the pop, fellas, 94. That's less than 100. That's only a few more than Johnny Moore and Jeff Malone and Alvin Adams and the checklist and all that stuff. So 94 pop, and the checklist may even be over 100. I'm not certain about that, but I know Jeff Malone, Johnny Moore, and Alvin Adams are under 100. But 94 for a Hall of Fame rookie card. This is it. This is his rookie card. This is the only one. It's not like Luka Doncic or John Morant where there's 7 million parallels. This is the card. That's it right there. There's 94 of them in PSA 10 condition, and that would account for this eye-popping number that card's selling at. If we look at the Neek just over the last, let's look at the last 2 years because that's what we're focusing on. You can see it's been on a pretty significant, incredible, steady rise. The card's gotten as high as $23,000, but the last 2 sales, 18.5, almost 20, then 18.5, 18.3. So that's just a very rare card. So population's going to have the most to do with that. He fits somewhere in the middle statistically of all of these iconic all-time greats. But that card's up 314% over the last 2 years. Next, and this is really surprising, is Isaiah. Isaiah has outperformed Ewing. Clyde Drexler is in the mix, even though he's got the highest pop out of all of these cards at 336. So over, really almost 3.5, or almost 4 times. Yeah, about 3.5. Between 3.5 and 4 times as many as the Dominique Wilkins, but Clyde Drexler still over the last 2 years has gone up. That leads me to believe that at 967 2 years ago, Clyde was probably a little bit undervalued, right? When a Johnny Moore is selling for $90,000 and Clyde Drexler, even now that he's even grown in the last 2 years, is selling for $2,275, seems to me something is wrong in the market. Again, I know pop has anything and everything to do with it, but at some point, we've got to put pop a little bit to the side, right? Demand has to be irrelevant, right? But then again, Johnny Moore, Jeff Malone, Alvin Adams, the checklist, guys like that, their demand is very difficult to quantify because those low pop cards are the linchpins for those people trying to collect sets. So for people trying to collect sets, those cards do mean more than the Clyde Drexler because they're just so much more difficult to get your hands on. But going down the list, what's really interesting is the best player on this list. Again, I'll go to war comparing Olajuwon to anybody on this list. He's the best player statistically. He's accomplished the most in his career. He's the best overall player. He's a little bit out of the spotlight. He does train bigs and work with NBA players now. And he's certainly incredibly respected amongst the media and his peers. He's just not on TV. He's foreign. He's got an accent. That kind of stuff does, unfortunately, matter in the hobby as far as collectability goes. Does it matter to me? Nope, it doesn't matter to me because I think Olajuwon's better than everybody on this list as far as what he's accomplished. But he's only up 89% over the last, I say only up 89% over the last 2 years. Wouldn't it be nice if your Tesla and your crypto was up 89% over the last 4 weeks? Sorry to bring up bad news, but there's your list over the last 2 years. Neek first, Isaiah next. I mean, Neek at 300% is earning a 3 times the ROI as Karl Malone and Hakeem Olajuwon. That's pretty much being attributed to low pop is driving the market right now. People are just going to find the lowest of the lowest pop, and 94 is a low pop for the single card of that Hall of Famer. Let's look at the last year. Neek's still at the top. So even over the last year, right, we've talked about how much the hobby's changing and how, cards are going down and this and that. Neek is still up 52% over the past year. His card's risen from a $12,000 starting value to, like we said a few days ago, it sold for $18,290 something dollars. There's been 9 sales, so this is not an anomaly or an aberration. This is the real deal. That's enough of a sample size over the last year to say, okay, the card is legitimately going up $6,290. No one else is remotely close to that, right? So a true dollar value change of $6,290. If you bought 5 Dominique Wilkins cards, which you could have done a year ago, you could have made about $32,000, $32,000 profit on those cards. Net eBay fees and net Uncle Sam if you pay those. So up 52%. The Chris Mullen is next in line. Again, no surprise. He's the next lowest pop. He's just a shade over 100 population. He's 107 pop. His card's up 36%. So it's no surprise the two lowest pop cards are the two highest percentage gainers over the last year, because that has become the focus of the hobby. As we get down here to the higher pop cards, 213, 336, 233, 328, look what happens. It's red. In fact, it's the only ones that are red are the highest pop cards. And so you'll see that right now in the market, it would seem to me that supply has taken a hyper focus. I think the pendulum has swung too far, right? Should LeBron Topps Chrome PSA 10s have come down in value? Are they really $40,000 cards like they were, a year or 15 months ago? No, they're not. But should the pendulum have swung this far? Should supply so drastically outweigh demand that demand has diminished because supply has become the hyper focus, is basically what I'm getting on. Will it be like that 2 years from now? I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak to the future, but I know this. A lot of cards that, again, Doncic is a pop 20,000 in base prism PSA 10. That's category A. LeBron is, a few thousand in Topps Chrome PSA 10. That's a whole different world than 20,000. And Clyde Drexler, Charles Barkley, Olajuwon, and Malone, while they are not LeBron James, those are four pretty damn good basketball players in the history of the NBA, and they have one rookie card, not 40 billion, and those are pops in the low hundreds, right? Go compare this to Jason Tatum's 2017 silver prism, let alone base prism. So I don't get it. Again, there may be a buying point here, over the last year for these cards, but let's see what happens. This is what's happened to those four over the last year. And again, here we go. We got Neek, Mullen, and Isaiah leading the way in percentage return over the last year. Let's shrink it to 6 months. Look who's number one. So this completely flies in the face of everything I just said. Some educated person out there is saying, wait a second. Yes, I know there's 336 of them. Oh, that's a crazy pop. But Clyde Drexler is one of the probably 10 greatest shooting guards that's ever lived. If it wasn't for Jordan, he'd probably have a ring on his finger. Or who knows, maybe more, who knows. Nobody knows what the NBA would have done, East, West, trades, this, that, but he would have had a ring for sure had Michael Jordan never been born, it looks like, in hindsight. But that Clyde Drexler over the last 6 months is up 21%, and there's been 19 sales. That's a lot. That's more than any other player except for Olajuwon, right? So 19 sales in the past 6 months alone, that's three a month. And it's up 21%. That's a $400 value change, right? So the card was at $18.75. Now it's selling for $22.75. Chris Mullen is next on the list. I still think low pop is driving that. Mullen is as off the radar gets. Neek also population driving that, up 8% over the last 6 months. We saw what it did in the first 6 months, prior. And so he's starting to level off a little bit. And then we've got in the red down here, the high pop cards again. And Olajuwon, again, the best player on this list, in my opinion, down 32% over the last 6 months. Interesting stuff. Let's shrink it down again and focus a little bit more on the last 3 months. Only 2 cards in the red, the Lolo Pop Dominique and the Patrick Ewing PSA 10, which is interesting to me. 5 sales of each, so there's been a sufficient sample size of the last 3 months, more than one a month, and then everything else is red, right? Because as we've talked about, cards are dipping a little bit right now and kind of gathering themselves. The Malone and the Olajuwon are both super down. I'm really surprised, honestly, the fact that the Olajuwon and the Malone are about the same price when I consider Olajuwon significantly more accomplished, and their pops are, again, the pop for Karl Malone's about 65% of what the Olajuwon is, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. But Olajuwon down to $49.27 for his last sold just seems really low. Again, let's look at what the Olajuwon's done. And again, I hate to keep hyper focusing on Olajuwon. Again, I have one Olajuwon PSA 10 and Olajuwon PSA 10 sticker. I'm selling both. So I have no dog in this hunt. I'm simply saying it seems like he's dipped a little bit, like the pendulum has swung too far back here. We know he went crazy here. It got to $25,000, fellas. That's a huge number. But then it came down sharply after that first quarter ended here in April, and then it's kind of continued to go down ever since. So that's interesting for an Olajuwon card. A lot of red on here. Let me hit that again. A lot of red on here. Olajuwon's still down there at the bottom. Let's look at the last month just in case that helps us. In the last month, some of these have, only sold 1 or 2 times, but, 4 of them have held. The Malone jumped a little bit. Maybe somebody looked at the Malone like we just did, looked at it over the last 3 months and said, hey, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing's changed with Karl Malone. His pop's not going up. It's not a high pop card. It's 213s, right in the middle in comparison to all these other ones. It's not in the 300s like Drexler and Olajuwon. But Olajuwon is still down over his last 4, 31%. Isaiah's down, Barkley's down. So maybe I'm selling my PSA 10s at the wrong time. I don't know. But it was time to move and put some money on the side and reinvest it into the hobby and do some different things. But anyway, that just wanted to show you guys that little historical comparison of all of these great Hall of Famers. And again, I apologize to Joe Dumars and some other Hall of Fame rookie cards I couldn't include in there from the 86 Fleer set. I would have liked to have fit them all in there, but Card Ladder cast me at 8 for now. Maybe that's something they'll change in the future. What's cool on Card Ladder is you can actually even change the date to see what's happened. I'm sorry, let me get you back over here. You can actually change the dates and do specific dates, start and finish dates over here. So I could have done that, and that probably would have been more helpful because I'm curious to see in what world was Karl Malone more valuable than, Hakeem Olajuwon in 2005. That just seemed odd to me. But there's so many interesting, cool little idiosyncrasies and arbitrages and, sometimes illogical movements in the market, over the course of history. So it's just kind of fun to look at that stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Again, this is one of those videos, guys, where I just push click, sort by percentage return, and start rambling. If you don't love 86 Fleer cards and you don't like math or nerdy stuff like indexes and percentage return, this probably is not the video for you. If you're still watching, it probably is the video for you. So thank you for those of you who did watch the video. I appreciate you watching. Keep collecting. Stay positive in the hobby, and peace.